Yes, and 240, Chairwoman. I just wanted to thank you so much for your time here tonight, and thank Senator Acosta for sponsoring this bill, and then as well as my colleague Senator Mack on 540, and especially want to thank the coalition of a lot of community groups who have done incredible work to really form this legislation. So I'm just really honored to be a co-sponsor here. You're going to hear a lot from coalition members and community members and activists, a lot about environmental impact and personal stories that are etched on my heart, and makes me very proud to fight for this. But you know, I have a unique perspective as someone that was once testifying in this chamber, actually. So, Chairwoman, I did want to thank you for your grace with dealing with so much testimony, because I remember 2 years ago, I was just a person testifying in this committee, and was not met with as much grace, and that's what sparked me to run for office, and now I'm a colleague. So let's keep, these voices are very, very important, and it does not behoove us to dismiss them. So I thank you for your time here and listening to all of this testimony. One of the things that I really love about the Green Justice Zone piece of legislation, especially, is there's so much built into it that has previously kind of gone ignored. And so one of the things that I like to highlight and like to talk about is how it shuts down polluting industries within the Green Justice Zones and offers the community-driven environmental remediation projects for residents of that zone, and pays those people to work in the polluted industry within the zone to find another job with comparable salary and benefits. Very often, I find that we are in a big hurry to praise ourselves for incremental environmental bills and change. And far too easy, we turn the other eye on who is being left behind. This piece of legislation does the opposite of that. It takes its time and it actually makes its effort to prioritize the communities that have for far too often carried the burden of our environmental negligence. So that's one of the reasons why I'm really, really proud of this piece of legislation. For years, we have watched self-proclaimed environmental advocates / legislators praise themselves for environmental half measures. And now this piece of legislation tends to build in an opportunity for what I consider atonement. We want to talk about what has happened and what we can do to make things better ahead, but oftentimes don't want to address the crimes and the sins that were behind us. There are a lot of environmental things that are needing atonement, and this bill does that. We don't get off the hook. We do not get to ignore the people that have been suffering due to lack of regulations and just sheer environmental evils. So that's one of the reasons why I really love the Green Justice Zones and what makes it different than any other piece of legislation. That's one of the most important things I would like to highlight here. There's no other piece of legislation that has built-in justice like this. No other piece of legislation that is bold enough to prioritize the people that have far too often been left behind. Not a one. So that's one reason why I really appreciate Senator Mack and her work on this. In particular, with the piece of legislation 219 regarding housing, we will hear a lot about the fact that 1/3 of our households in Rhode Island are cost burdened. I know I hear from for housing costs. We know the cost of utilities, and we know that that's a burden as well. We know that there's an urgency around clean energy, and yet we do not put the money there. One of the other pieces I wanted to highlight about this piece of legislation, that it does something very different than any other piece of legislation. Again, these are two very unique pieces of legislation. This piece of legislation has PLAs built into it. Far too often, we are, again, in a rush to pat ourselves on the back for half measures. This does not do that. This not only takes care of housing and those that have housing insecure, and not only addresses the fact that we need rooftop solar panels and creates long-term trade jobs, but those long-term trade jobs are protected by PLAs, and it is a big hats off to the coalitions that have kind of fought for this and made sure that there was labor equity built into this as well. Again, no other piece of legislation does this in this way, and so I'm very, very proud of both Senator Mack and Senator Acosta, and proud to be a co-sponsor and to hear all the testimony of the people that have worked so hard to make this bill a reality. I really urge my colleagues to vote, to make sure this gets a vote on the floor. It deserves, the people that have been championing and working and honestly suffering deserve to have this bill have the dignity of a full floor vote, and I urge my colleagues to move it out of committee.